It's strange how a single moment, one glance, one tiny detail can change everything you thought you knew about your life. That night, it was the ring. Her ring. Sitting alone on a marble table, catching the glint of chandelier light above it, positioned right next to a man's half-empty champagne glass. I didn't even recognize the man. But I recognized the ring. We were at a company celebration, a high-end affair thrown by the firm she worked for. A private estate in the hills with valet parking, catered food, and string lights wrapped around every tree like it was a damn fairy tale. I'd arrived a little late, work running over, and Emily had told me not to worry, that she'd be there early helping set up. I remember being a little annoyed. This was supposed to be a shared night, and it already felt like she'd stepped into it without me. The second I walked into the courtyard, I spotted her. She was standing near the garden's edge, her body turned slightly towards some guy in a navy suit. Her posture struck me immediately, relaxed, casual, a little too open. She wasn't just smiling. She was laughing, the kind of unfiltered laugh that came from somewhere deep and comfortable. And she was touching his arm, not a big gesture, just fingertips grazing his sleeve as she leaned in closer. Mate in a way you don't expect to see from your wife when you walk into a party. I should have looked away, should have approached them calmly, or given her the benefit of the doubt. But I couldn't move. I stood there for what felt like a full minute, watching them from across the courtyard. My eyes drifted, and that's when I saw the ring. It was just sitting there, on the edge of a polished marble table beside the guy's glass. Her ring's silver band, modest diamond. The same one I'd saved up for in my 20s, the one I slid onto her finger under the September sky with shaking hands. I knew it like I knew my own heartbeat. Why would she take it off? Why leave it there out in the open as if it meant nothing? I walked toward them slowly, trying not to draw attention, but the weight in my chest grew with every step. My thoughts were a chaotic mess, confused, angry, desperate for some rational explanation. Maybe she was washing her hands? Maybe it was irritating her skin? Maybe I was just being paranoid? As I neared, she spotted me. And that's when everything shifted. Her posture changed instantly. She stepped away from him, turned her body toward the house, and began babbling about the crowd, how hot it was, how she needed air. The man glanced at me and gave a polite nod, but I could tell by his expression that he knew. Not necessarily who I was, but what I was. The husband. The one who wasn't supposed to be there just yet. I said nothing. I looked at her, and then I looked at the ring. Still there. Still shining under the fairy lights like a mocking little trophy. She never acknowledged it. Not once. Not during the awkward minutes that followed when she introduced the guy Tim, or Todd, or something with a T as a coworker from another office. Not while we stood there, her hand now tucked under her elbow instead of touching his. Not while she chattered on about the food, the wine, the live band that was supposed to start later. Every topic in the world except the one glaring at us from that table. Eventually, I picked it up. Quietly. Slipped it into my pocket without a word. She didn't even flinch. Just kept talking. I don't think she realized I noticed it at first. Or maybe she did and hoped I'd pretend not to. The rest of the evening played out in a blur. I mingled, smiled, shook hands with strangers while my mind screamed the entire time. I watched her out of the corner of my eye, floating from group to group with that same carefree energy she used to have in our early days. Only now it felt borrowed, like it had been lent to someone else. Someone single. Someone untethered. Every so often I saw her glance over at me, and every time she did, her smile faltered just a little. Just enough to let me know she was aware. And yet, still no explanation. No pull aside. No whispered apology. We didn't talk about it on the drive home. Not once. I stared out the window, clutching her ring in my palm, feeling the grooves where it had once nestled comfortably against her skin. She hummed to the radio like everything was normal. Like she wasn't wearing a lie on her bare finger. That night, when we got home, she went straight to the bathroom. I heard the water running. I stood in the bedroom staring at the tiny circle of metal in my hand. I thought about placing it on her nightstand. I thought about confronting her. I thought about sleeping on the couch. In the end, I did none of those things. I set the ring in the drawer of my nightstand, climbed into bed, and lay awake beside her for hours while she slept. Or pretended to. After that night at the estate, I became someone else. Or maybe I just became the version of myself I'd always feared, quiet, watchful, living inside my head. The world kept moving, but I didn't. I stayed stuck in that moment, in that flash of a ring beside a stranger's glass, and everything since then has been measured against it. At first, I didn't want to believe it. I kept telling myself there had to be a reasonable explanation. There always was, right? People don't just throw away their marriage. Not over nothing. But then once that seed of doubt was planted, it sprouted fast. My memories turned against me. That wasn't the first odd thing, was it? A few weeks before that party, Emily had started taking these long showers at night. I remember thinking it was strange. She'd usually be in bed early, scrolling her phone or reading, but suddenly she needed a shower at 11 p.m. She claimed it helped her decompress. Okay, fine. But then came the gym. She'd never been big on fitness. Not because she didn't care, just it wasn't her thing. But out of nowhere, she signed up for a premium gym 20 minutes from our house. Not the one 5 minutes down the street, no, this one had eucalyptus towels and cold-pressed juice and, apparently, the exact brand of escape she needed. She bought new workout gear, stuff she'd never shown interest in before. Form-fitting tops, brand-name leggings, expensive sneakers. When I teased her about becoming a gym rat, she laughed a little too hard and said, "What, don't you want me to stay hot for you?" I did. Of course I did. But it wasn't about staying hot for me. That much was becoming clear. Then there were the phone calls. At first, it was subtle. Her phone would buzz and she'd casually walk into another room. I assumed it was work. She had a high-stress job and always said she had to be available. But soon it became every night. Always someone needing to talk. Always just enough out of *T that I couldn't make out anything. One night, I came into the kitchen and caught her ending a call abruptly. She jumped. Actually jumped. I asked who it was. "Just Kelly," she said. "Kelly from work?" "Yeah." She never used to call her coworkers by first name alone. It stuck out. Later, I checked our call logs. There were no calls to anyone named Kelly. But what finally broke the illusion was her perfume. She wore this one fragrance I'd gotten her for our anniversary 2 years ago, something subtle, jasmine with a hint of citrus. I loved it. But one day, she came home smelling different. Heavier. Muskier. Like the kind you notice from across a room. I asked her about it. She blinked like she'd forgotten she had it on. "Oh, it's a sample I got. Just playing around." But the scent clung to her. Not just once. Not just by accident. Repeatedly. Then, one weekend, she said she'd be staying with her friend Marissa, girls' wine night, she called it. I didn't even question it. I trusted her. That's what hurts most in hindsight. But when I opened her laptop the next morning, mine had died and I needed to print a receipt. I saw her calendar. There was no wine night scheduled. What I did see, however, was a calendar block from a synced email titled, "Hotel, confirmed check-in. Downtown." The same night. She got back the next afternoon, claiming she and Marissa had lost track of time. Her cheeks were flushed. She wore a different outfit than when she left. Her hair was curled. The excuses rolled in easy. She'd forgotten to update the calendar. Marissa had spilled wine on her original outfit. They'd stayed up late talking about life. I nodded. I smiled. I kissed her on the cheek and told her I hoped it was a good night. But my insides were screaming. I wanted to believe her. I desperately wanted to believe that I was wrong. That I'd become some paranoid shell of a husband who couldn't separate coincidence from conspiracy. But she was changing, and not in ways that people change together. She was becoming someone who didn't flinch when lying. Someone who didn't look up from her phone when I walked into the room. Someone who made excuses not to be around on weekends, work emergencies, last-minute brunches, networking events. Her phone, once casually left on the coffee table, was now always with her. And always locked. And me? I stopped asking questions. Not because I didn't want answers, but because I was afraid of what those answers would do to me. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus. At work, I'd catch myself rereading the same email 3 times before realizing I hadn't processed a word. At home, I moved around like a ghost, present but disconnected. I began watching her the way you watch a stranger in a room, trying to decipher patterns, listening for subtext. I tracked the tone of her voice, the timing of her texts, the hours she was at the gym. And what scared me wasn't just what I was seeing, it was how natural she'd become at hiding. She didn't stumble. She didn't hesitate. She had learned how to lie with ease. But despite all of that, despite the evidence, the inconsistencies, the quiet decay of our Macy, I still clung to the possibility that maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe I was the problem. After all, she hadn't said anything. She still called me babe sometimes. Still asked if I wanted anything from the store. Still made coffee on Sundays. But it was mechanical. Like she was maintaining a routine she no longer believed in. Then, one night, she went to bed early. Said she had a migraine. I stayed up, half working, half spiraling. And at around midnight, I heard her phone buzz on the kitchen counter. That was the only mistake she made. It lit up with a name I didn't recognize, Tennis Tim. I froze. The screen dimmed before I could read the message. My pulse was hammering in my ears. Tennis Tim. The next morning, I casually asked her if she still played. She looked up from her cereal and said, "Played what?" "Tennis," I said. "You used to play a little, right?" She blinked slowly. "Oh, yeah. In college." "Why?" "Just wondering," I replied, sipping my coffee. "You ever think about picking it back up?" She laughed. "Nah. I'd probably pull a muscle." Then she kissed my forehead and went off to work. And I sat there, her phone still locked tight in her purse, thinking that wasn't just a lie. That was rehearsed. I never wanted to be the kind of man who snoops. That used to be one of my silent vows, trust her even when it's hard. But after the ring, after the perfume, after tennis, Tim, trust didn't feel like a virtue anymore. It felt like a liability. So one night, while she was asleep, I did the thing I swore I never would. I waited until her breathing slowed, that rhythmic hush that meant she was fully under. Then I slid out of bed, walked to the kitchen, and retrieved her phone from her purse like a thief in his own home. My hands were shaking. It was locked, of course. Same 6 digits I'd seen her punch in 100 times when we first got together, my birthday. She'd never changed it. I plugged the phone into my laptop. I'd read somewhere that you could back it up without unlocking it. I followed a guide, clicked a few settings, and just like that, I had it. The whole device mirrored onto my screen. Messages, notes, photos, apps. It felt like breaking into a private vault, only this vault was our marriage. The first thing I searched for was Tim. And there he was, Tennis Tim. It should have been a harmless nickname, but in the context of everything else, it felt mocking. Like a smirk from behind closed doors. I opened their text thread. The first few messages were light, jokes about their game, emojis, teasing. But then it shifted. He sent a photo of himself in workout gear, sweaty, smirking. Her reply, "Damn. Should I bring ice or just stand in the splash zone?" My stomach flipped. I kept scrolling. The texts grew flirtier, less careful. He called her M, said he wished he could steal her for a real weekend. She replied with hearts. They made plans. Hotels. Flights. Pictures. Most damning of all? A selfie of the two of them in what looked like a beachside Airbnb. She wore sunglasses, lips curled in a smile I hadn't seen in months. He was shirtless, holding her waist. The date stamp? 3 weeks ago. The same weekend she said she was at a work conference in Seattle. But that wasn't Seattle. She'd even sent me a photo of a PowerPoint screen as proof she was there. I remembered thinking, who sends a conference slide as a check-in photo? But I didn't question it. I trusted her. Now I saw the truth. The presentation wasn't from a hotel ballroom, it was a **T. The metadata was clear. Saved from Google Images. I sat there in the dark, absorbing blow after blow. Every message was another punch to the ribs. Can't wait to sneak away again, you make me forget I'm married, Mark still thinks I'm in Seattle. I kept scrolling. There were payment receipts from our joint account labeled medical, but the actual purchases were Airbnb bookings and plane tickets to San Diego. I clicked into our bank account. The same amounts were listed, categorized and filed under health. That's what made it worse. It wasn't just the cheating. It was the planning, the deception, the quiet siphoning of shared resources for something I never consented to. She had been living a double life. Not recklessly, not impulsively, but methodically. Like someone building a house of cards while making sure I never saw the base. I opened her photo library. There were albums I hadn't seen, hidden ones. Favorites. Fitness. Weekend vibes. Each folder contained dozens of selfies, photos of her in swimsuits, bathroom mirrors, hotel balconies. Many of them were time-stamped for dates she claimed she was working late or visiting family. And Tim was there in more than a few. Shirtless. Laughing. Kissing her cheek. Holding hands on a boardwalk. The worst one? A boomerang of them clinking glasses at a rooftop bar, captioned, "To us clinking glasses." To us. A celebration of a lie. I closed the laptop. For a while, I just sat there staring into nothing. I was numb but also burning. Every word she'd said over the past year now felt loaded. Every argument, every distant smile, every casual "love you" was now something else entirely. A cover story. Around 3 a.m. I heard her stir in the bedroom. I quickly unplugged the phone, returned it to her purse, and slid back into bed. My heart pounded like I'd just run a marathon. She shifted beside me, mumbled something about the cold, and pulled the blanket tighter around her. She had no idea. That morning, I watched her move around the kitchen like nothing was wrong. She made coffee, hummed a song I didn't recognize, packed a tote bag, and said she had a long day of meetings. I just nodded, smiled faintly, and said, "Drive safe." She kissed me on the cheek. I felt nothing. As soon as she left, I called the bank. Froze the joint account. Created a new one under my name. I made a list of everything she had access to, passwords, subscriptions, bills, and started changing it all. I wasn't thinking clearly, just reacting like a man crawling out of a burning house grabbing anything he could carry. Next, I called a divorce attorney. Her name was Hannah. She had a calm voice and a reputation for being merciless when needed. I told her everything, the texts, the money, the lies. She asked for evidence. I had all of it. Within hours, she had started drafting paperwork. That evening, Emily came home a little later than usual. She smiled when she saw me. Sorry, traffic was insane. I nodded, watching her carefully. She walked past me, dropped her bag, and kicked off her shoes. Then she asked, "What's for dinner?" "Not sure yet," I said. "I was thinking we could talk first." She paused. "Talk about what?" I didn't answer. I just walked into the office and returned with my laptop. Opened it. Turned the screen toward her. I didn't say a word. The moment she saw it, her face changed. Not guilt. Not shock. Resignation. She didn't gasp or cry. She didn't stammer or beg. She just stood there, blinking slowly. And then, without a word, she walked to the couch and sat down. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she said quietly. "I'm sure," I replied. She looked at the floor. "You weren't supposed to see it yet." That struck me. "Yet? You were planning to tell me?" "I don't know," she whispered. "Eventually." I waited, but she didn't say anything else. No apology. No explanation. No denial. Just silence. And that silence told me everything. It told me she was done pretending. It told me the life we built had already ended in her mind, and the only reason it was still standing was because I hadn't seen the wreckage yet. So I made a choice. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and slid the divorce packet onto the counter. She didn't even flinch. "Mark," she said, her voice barely audible. I didn't answer. She stood up, walked to the bedroom, and closed the door behind her. I never asked what she did next. Never cared. She left the room, but the damage stayed. And for the first time in months, I felt something like clarity. The day after everything unraveled, the world felt eerily still. I expected to wake up with that same twisting anxiety, the kind that had lived in my chest for weeks. But what I felt instead was a hollow calm. Not peace. Not acceptance. Just the absence of panic. Like standing in the eye of a storm you now realize isn't over, but is at least finally visible. Emily didn't bring up the night before. She came downstairs, poured herself a cup of coffee, and sat at the table in silence. We didn't make eye contact. We didn't need to. The air between us had already told the truth. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a phase. This was a fracture. And it was permanent. I left the house without saying much, told her I had errands, something vague and forgettable. In reality, I was heading to Hannah's office. The divorce lawyer. She had called earlier that morning, saying the paperwork was ready for my signature. Her assistant, Danielle, met me in the lobby with a manila folder and the kind of solemn professionalism you expect from someone who's done this 100 times. "This," Danielle said, sliding the folder across the table, "is the petition for dissolution of marriage. It includes grounds for divorce based on irreconcilable differences, though your evidence of infidelity is attached as Exhibit A." I flipped through the packet. Our marriage, summarized in bullet points and court language. Names. Dates. Assets. Allegations. All in black and white. It felt like reading someone else's story. But my name was at the top. My signature was required at the bottom. I didn't hesitate. I signed every page. Danielle nodded and collected the papers. "We'll file today. She'll be served by Monday unless she waives formal service." "She won't," I said. "She's not ready to admit this is real." Danielle gave a polite smile that said, "They never are." That night, I didn't go home right away. I drove around the city aimlessly, letting the wheels hum beneath me. I passed the places that had defined our life together. Our favorite Thai restaurant, the park where we used to walk on Sunday mornings, the bookstore where we'd gotten into a loud debate over hardcover versus paperback. I wondered what she remembered when she passed those places now. Did they sting the way they did for me? Or had she already disconnected completely? When I finally returned home, the house was dark. Emily was upstairs. Her shoes were by the door, her bag in the same place she always dropped it. For a moment, I stood there in the hallway, absorbing the familiarity. The same furniture, the same walls, the same scent of lavender from the diffuser she always refilled. Everything was the same except for us. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a drink. Then I opened the drawer where I had placed her ring. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I missed what it symbolized, but because I realized I didn't miss it. I didn't miss her. I missed the idea of us. The blueprint I'd built my future around. And now that blueprint had been burned. She hadn't just hurt me. She'd hollowed out the vision I had for everything ahead. Later that night, I confronted her. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw accusations. I simply laid the facts on the table. I filed today, I said. The papers are on the counter. You'll be served early next week unless you want to sign a waiver. If you don't, it'll go through anyway. It just means it'll take longer. Emily didn't say anything at first. She was sitting at the edge of the bed, legs crossed, her phone resting face down beside her. She looked tired, not physically but spiritually, like someone who'd been keeping up an act and had finally run out of scenes. I figured, she said. That's all. No, why? No, can we talk about this? No resistance. Just acceptance. So that's it? I asked. She looked up, her eyes glassy but dry. You want me to beg? Is that what this is? No, I said. I want you to explain how you let it get this far without ever saying a word. She didn't answer. I pressed again. Was I really that easy to walk away from? Emily's jaw clenched. Her voice dropped to a whisper. It wasn't about you. I laughed, sharp and bitter. That's funny, because it sure felt personal. She stood then, walked to the closet, and pulled out a duffel bag. Not a suitcase. Just something small, like she already knew she wouldn't stay the night. I'll go stay with Marissa, she said. Do you really think I believe you're going to Marissa's? She froze, turned back toward me. Where I go isn't your business anymore. It was cruel. But she was right. She packed in silence. I didn't help. I didn't stop her. I just watched the woman I used to love zip up a bag like she was heading to the gym, not walking out on 10 years of shared life. When she left, she didn't slam the door. She didn't even close it hard. Just pulled it shut. The quiet that followed wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. A kind of stillness that made you notice every creak in the walls, every hum of the fridge, every click of the air conditioner switching off. But I didn't chase her. I sat on the edge of our bed, my bed now, and stared at the empty space where she used to sleep. My mind replayed every moment I'd mistaken for love in the past few months. Every smile she'd given that didn't reach her eyes. Every I love you that had been more muscle memory than meaning. And I realized she'd left long before she packed that bag. She was just waiting for me to catch up. Over the next few days, the process began. The attorney served the papers officially. I signed what I needed to. She responded with a short acknowledgement, agreeing not to contest. She didn't ask for alimony. She didn't fight for the house. She just wanted it done fast. Part of me wanted her to put up a fight, to show some sign that it had mattered. But all I got was compliance. Polite distance. Businesslike detachment. It was humiliating, but also freeing. I started changing things. Took down the photos. Pulled her name off the bills. Canceled the anniversary trip I had booked months ago. She had told me she couldn't go because of work. I checked the dates. She'd been with Tim in California. Of course. I spent that night in the guest room. Not because I had to, but because I didn't want to sleep somewhere that smelled like her shampoo anymore. I opened the windows, let in the cold, and for the first time in what felt like years, I slept. Not well, but uninterrupted. It had been 2 days since Emily left the house and 1 day since she texted me that she'd signed the divorce papers. No dramatic paragraphs. No apologies. Just a photo of the signed document and the words, "I've handled my part. Good luck, Mark." I stared at it for a while, not knowing whether to laugh, scream, or feel vindicated. It was her final act of indifference, I thought. But I was wrong. That afternoon, a message popped up in my inbox. A name I didn't recognize, Mara Jensen. I almost deleted it, probably spam. But the subject line stopped me cold, about Tim. I opened it. Hi, Mark. I hope this doesn't come across as intrusive. My name is Mara and I was married to Tim, yes, that Tim. I only found out about you recently, but I felt you deserved to know the full story. Tim has a pattern. He finds women who are emotionally vulnerable, usually married, and he pulls them into these intense, manipulative relationships. It starts like an affair, but it doesn't stay that simple. If this sounds crazy, I understand. But I have proof. And I think you need to see it. I blinked, rereading the message 3 times before I could process the words. Emotionally vulnerable, manipulative, a pattern. I knew Tim was scum, but this was something else. There was a Dropbox link attached. Against my better judgment, I clicked it. Inside was a folder labeled Tim Documentation, Court Filing 2021. My stomach dropped. Inside were scanned affidavits, restraining orders, complaints, women who had come forward in the past. All of them told the same story. Tim met them through work, or mutual friends, or social events. He gained their trust, made them feel seen, then slowly isolated them. In several cases, he had convinced them to give him access to their finances, even co-sign loans. One woman had lost her house. Another had filed for bankruptcy. I scrolled through *TS of texts eerily similar to the ones I'd found on Emily's phone. His tone was identical. His nicknames. The way he mirrored back their insecurities and twisted them into dependence. I sat back in my chair, stunned. Emily had no idea what she was really part of. She wasn't just cheating on me, she was being played. Later that day, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, I listened. Mr. Gaines, this is Detective Voss with the Financial Crimes Division. I'm following up on a referral tied to an ongoing investigation involving Timothy Caldwell. You're listed as a financial contact for one of the affected parties. Please return my call at your earliest convenience. I didn't know whether to feel validated or violated. I called him back. Thanks for reaching out, the detective said. You're not under investigation, but your wife, Emily Gaines, appears on financial records linked to Tim Caldwell. We believe she may be another one of his targets. Targets? Not partners. Not accomplices. Targets. The detective asked if I could provide any relevant communication, *TS, or records. I sent him everything. He thanked me and promised to follow up. That evening, as I was trying to wrap my head around it all, Mara messaged again. He's been arrested before. Petty charges, mostly. But I've heard from others who were afraid to come forward. If your wife is still in contact with him, please urge her to step back. He doesn't care about her. He's using her. Just like he used me. It wasn't rage I felt anymore. It was something heavier, pity maybe. For Emily. For me. For every person who'd walked into a relationship thinking they'd found a spark, only to discover it was a wildfire set on purpose. I debated whether to warn her. We weren't exactly on speaking terms, and frankly, she hadn't earned any favors from me. But this was bigger than infidelity. This was real danger. And despite everything, part of me still wanted her to be safe. So I called. She didn't answer. I left a message. Emily, it's Mark. I'm not calling to fight. I just think you should know Tim isn't who you think he is. A woman named Mara Jensen reached out. She was married to him. There are legal filings proof he's done this before. There's an investigation now. Financial crimes. Fraud. Please be careful. I hung up, unsure if she'd even listen. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining her checking into some hotel with Tim, still convinced it was some grand love story. Still believing she was different. That she was special. And maybe once she was. But not to him. The next morning, I had a new voicemail. Emily. Hey. I got your message. I don't know what to say. I didn't know. I thought. She paused, her voice shaking. He told me you'd say things like this. That you'd try to make me doubt him. I thought you were just bitter. But now. I don't know. I'll look into it. Click. I sat there holding my phone, heart pounding. It was the first honest thing she'd said to me in months. She was afraid. 2 days later, I got an email from Detective Voss. Timothy Caldwell was taken into custody this morning. Several victims have come forward, and charges are being finalized. Your assistance has been noted. Thank you. I didn't feel joy. I felt empty. It didn't change the betrayal. It didn't restore trust. But it did confirm something I hadn't dared hope. This wasn't about me. This wasn't a failure of my love or my effort. I hadn't lost her to someone better. I'd watched her get manipulated by someone worse. That evening, I walked into our kitchen and looked around. The counters were clean. Her mug was gone. Her boots weren't by the door. The ring was still in the drawer, untouched. And I realized this wasn't a marriage anymore. It was a crime scene. After Tim's arrest, I should have felt closure. But instead, I felt cracks forming beneath everything I thought I understood. The truth wasn't cleaner. It was messier, layered with betrayal on top of manipulation. And Emily? She didn't even reach out again. Not a call. Not a text. Nothing. I started collecting. Not out of spite, out of necessity. Receipts, *TS, text backups, bank statements. I cataloged them like evidence from a crime. Because that's what this had become. Not an affair, but an autopsy of our marriage. Then my sister sent me something unexpected. A chat log between Emily and one of her friends. *TS she'd found through mutual connections. The conversation was dated months ago. It wasn't vague or speculative. It was clear, calculated. Emily had planned this. "I'm so done pretending," she wrote. "If I push him far enough, he'll break up with me and I won't have to be the bad guy." "Just be careful," her friend had replied. "He's not stupid. Oh, he won't see it. He's too busy trying to fix us. I just have to make him think it's all his idea." There it was. Plain as day. She hadn't just cheated. She'd manipulated every corner of our life to make me feel like the one who gave up. Like I'd failed to hold things together. Meanwhile, she'd been tearing it down behind my back. Rehearsing an exit while I was still trying to find the door. It hit me harder than the texts with Tim ever did. Because this wasn't a mistake. It was arson. That night, I asked her to come by the house one last time. No lawyers. No yelling. Just an end. She showed up in jeans and a sweater, eyes guarded, mouth tight. "What is this about?" she asked. "I want you to take whatever you still care about," I said. "And I want you to go. For good." She looked around like she didn't recognize the place anymore. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she never really did. She gathered a few things, her old camera, a sweater from the closet, a stack of letters she'd once saved from me. And then she paused. "What changed?" she asked quietly. I didn't answer. I just handed her the printed chat logs. She didn't read them. She just took the envelope and nodded. And then she walked out. No argument. No apology. Just the soft click of the door closing behind her. That night the house felt calm. Still. For the first time in months, I brewed coffee and drank it without the usual pit in my stomach. The silence wasn't suffocating anymore. It was freedom. Weeks later, I met someone new. Her name was Madison. We bumped into each other at a bookstore, reached for the same novel, and laughed awkwardly. We talked about books, photography, cities we wanted to visit. We didn't talk about heartbreak. And honestly, that was enough. No grand gestures. No declarations. Just two people standing at the edge of something new, unburdened by the past. Closure didn't come from confrontation. Came from peace. From knowing that the worst had happened and I was still standing. Still breathing. Still me.